Good afternoon. I've had several comments and questions regarding how to access the interim assessment data in Edugence. It was uploaded last Friday, and it is available for all teachers to see. This is the best way for teachers to get in to see interim assessment data. In order to find this, you will actually have to go to a different place than we're used to. But on the left screen, you'll notice this button that says Interim, Interim. So you'll click on the interim assessment tab. Now, you will need to select your campus. I'm actually in as a teacher just so that you can see. You don't have to teach grade. The teacher will automatically come up. You don't have to select classes. Now, if you wanted to select a specific group, you could, if you wanted to break it up that way. But if you wanted to look at all your kids, then don't select a class. Here's where it gets very important. Number one, make sure the year is set to 2026. The test is going to be interim and your grade. So interim grade 3 reading. Now, I do have to answer these. So under language, this was English. And under window, remember when it comes to the interim assessments, because we took them in the spring, all of our reading and math assessments are under window 3. All of our science and social studies are under window 2. This is reading we're looking for, so we're going to go to window 3. If you don't go to the right window, you will not pull up data correctly. So once you have all that in, you're going to go ahead and hit the play button. It will take just a little bit, so you will notice some spinning. And then there you go. So let me walk you through how to read this. The very first page is probably the least beneficial page, but it does give you some information that's very important. And that is the overall summary of our students. So when we look at this, I can see the district compared to the teacher, because again, I'm under a teacher view. If I was under a principal view or a campus administrator view, I would see the different teachers as well. So now when I look at this, what I can see is that there are two reporting categories that are outlined. The first one is reporting category for the reading. The second one is the writing reporting category for the writing. So if you notice how our scholars did, but here's really what you want to look at. These are the projected scores. Here's the average scale score, but this is the percent right now based on where we are. If the scholar was to take the assessment, this is what we would expect our breakdown to be. This is the projection for performance on STAR. So 23% where it did not meet versus 47% for the district. 8% at approaches, 12% at approaches for the district. Now remember, when you see the percents here for meets and masters, these are only for meets and masters. To get a true image of what the performance would look like, or similar to how we've discussed it. So you would have to get the total of approaches plus, you would add the 8 plus the 13, 21, plus the 57, which is 77, 78, 78, sorry. Anyway, so remember that. The same thing with the meets. That does not mean only 13% meets. That means there's just 13% in that category. But when you add meets and above, which is what we normally look at, that's 13% plus 57%, add those together, and you get a total of 70%. So that gives you an idea. Now, you can also see how the percent of scholars did on individual SEs. However, be cautious, because a lot of times these numbers become skewed because of how many questions and whether or not all your scholars saw the same questions. They didn't. The first 14 questions in reading and math are identical. After that, it becomes computer adaptive based on how the first 14 went. They start asking questions based on the ability to come to a final decision on where they're currently performing. So that can be a little bit daunting from this angle. The one thing I like to do, and by the way, you can look at the same summary now. You can look at it by student groups. Again, it does take a few minutes to run, or a few seconds to update. But as you can see, once everything is updated, you can now break it down by how our performance groups did, by economic disadvantaged, our GT, our male-female counts, our 504, special ed. All of that information can be found. So that information is beneficial. Now, I want to go to the teacher tab. You can look at, it breaks it down by a summary, by the individual course, if they have multiple courses, or by the actual period. It's the period one I often like to look at. So as you can see now, it'll break it down by all teachers across the board, all periods across the board. So it's good information. What I really like is the detailed analysis, because the detailed analysis breaks it down by individual scholar. Just here's how they did, both reading and math. It will show analysis. So this is the table I kind of like. Right now, this is everybody, but I can do it by any kind of categorization. So let's just look at reading. So I'm just going to select reading. Grade 3 window, that's all good. Let's say I just want to see my my economically disadvantaged. Or let me just do a simpler one. Let me do all my kids who were at the did not meets level. So now I see my scholars who are at did not meet. I can see their score, what their scale score is expected to be. Okay, that scale score levels to an approaches, to the projection of approaches for each of these scholars. Okay, go all the way back, and now let's add approaches meets a masters. Again, all my kids by performance, how they performed, what their scale score was. Now, I can do this by item analysis, but again, this is the point at which it's important to understand some of the markings. So the question numbers, if there is an asterisk, and it's kind of an ugly asterisk, by the way, if there's an asterisk in here, that means that's the number of scholars who saw the question. Okay, so you can see how many times this question came up when it was looked at, when it was looked at by different scholars. So as you see, some scholars saw it, some didn't, some had the ability to interact with it, some did not. That's because it's a computer adaptive test, and so there are different questions based on how a scholar moves through. Under SE analysis, I can see the same thing, but now I can see SE by individual. Now, most of the time, if you see a 0 in the scholar's reporting category, it means that scholar it means that scholar was not asked that question. Okay? Because they kind of try to find a question that they can eventually see. You can see the number of items as well. But that's how you go through this process. I hope this little video helps, and happy hunting for data.